So Jim McCaffrey with Crow Holdings. Glad to be here, and thanks for having an interest in this. I was really proud to be able to tell my kids on Earth Day that I'm coming to EarthX to talk about a big, meaningful project. So usually when I give this presentation, trying to speak to people who are trying to figure out what's the best office space or why this is a great office space for them. Today, I think it's great because we get to have more of a focus on the environment and doing good things for the Earth. But here's what I think is absolutely exceptional, and if you remember nothing else, maybe remember this. I believe that this building does both. It is, I would argue, the greatest advancement in the design and construction industry for environmental sustainability in our lifetime, I believe. The technology behind it, mass timber, that is. And I also believe it's an exceptional office space. And I'm so excited. You know, we first and foremost are stewards of the capital that we invest and manage. And we work to build business places that make companies more successful. What is so exciting now, you know, we always want to do what's right for the environment, and here is a crossroads where these two things are coming together and merging in very exciting ways. And there's a whole other aspect of health and wellness that, you know, honestly is my personal favorite. Okay, fundamentally, to be clear, we're talking about mass timber construction. So what is mass timber construction? People have been building with wood for centuries. But within the last decade or two, a couple decades, people figured out ways to assemble the wood together with a variety of methods, adhesives, dowels, nails, etc., to create panels, and then to take those panels and to layer them together in a variety of ways, sometimes cross-laminated. And what happens is the strength of wood, if you just took a log and cut it down to a beam, it'll have a degree of strength. But if you take panels and boards and laminate them together using this technology, and you end up with the same size piece of wood, it'll have significantly greater structural characteristics. And then similarly, the manufacturing processes by which we do this have just taken leaps and bounds and have brought it into a certain economic efficiency. And so building with wood is having a renaissance in a very big way. And so here we have done, this is a 7-story building. By the way, this is, for a time, this has been the largest mass timber office building in the United States. There's a well-known tech firm that's building a larger one out in California, but we finished first, so we get to wear the crown for a little while. And so, due to some details, for our 7-story building, we were capped out at a 85-foot height. And we have 6 stories of mass timber construction over a 1-floor concrete podium. And then we also used concrete for the core of the building. So above the first floor and outside the core, this building, all the columns, all the beams, and all the deck are all made of wood. And so in terms of, let's focus on the environmental benefits. All right, so this building, this office building, has a carbon footprint that is 14% of the carbon footprint it would have had it been an all-concrete alternative. And that is the predominant alternative by far. So again, this office building has 14% of the carbon footprint that it would have. Now, if we look nationwide, worldwide, right, carbon footprint is generally accepted as the #1 metric for environmental impact. And the construction industry, I've read, is attributable for 50% of raw material extraction globally and 40% of the global carbon footprint. So if this industry is responsible for 40% of the global carbon footprint, and if, you know, ambitious goal here, but if the entire construction industry could figure out how to reduce their carbon footprint the way that we did, that would reduce the world's carbon footprint by 1/3. So this is, you know, this is not an official metric. This is just me talking. I think this is the single greatest advancement in our lifetime for environmental sustainability in the construction industry. Now, a big thing, let me see. I got to show it to you. I mean, showing it to you is the best, right? So usually for us, when we're making the office pitch, and by the way, the building's already leased, so I'm not going to hound any of you for a lease. We're not trying to sell anything. We're just telling a great story. Side note, the building was 100% leased last quarter, in November of last year to a company you may have heard of, Toyota, or more specifically, Toyota Financial Services. So it's a very exciting, listen, anytime you put a vision out as a developer and a company, any company, much less a company as great as this one, comes and says, yes, we love the vision that you set, we agree this is the home for our business, that's a very rewarding thing. But if you know enough to look across the country at the companies that are embracing this mass timber technology, again, it's been done before. I could show you office buildings that are more than 10 years old, but not very much. So we're sort of on the, we're not pioneering, but we're on the early adopter. And if you look at other companies that have embraced mass timber in meaningful ways, you're going to see a who's who in the Fortune 20 of the United States. You're going to see Google, Walmart, Amazon, Microsoft, Toyota, Adidas, Under Armour. I'm sure I'm forgetting a couple. There's rumors that Apple's in progress, Meta. I mean, you're seeing a trend here, right? And these people aren't doing this on a whim. These people spend more money researching productivity for their employees. They spend more money researching the health and wellness of their employees, or really how to recruit and retain their employees. These companies research and put more effort and money into that than anybody else. All right, so that tells you that there's something here in terms of a good message for not just the environment, but also productivity and health and wellness and recruiting and retention and productivity. So usually the first thing that catches people's attention is the environmental benefit, and really the thing that hooks them is the aesthetics. It's beautiful, all right? It's just a beautiful building. I've personally given, I don't even know how many dozens of tours, maybe over 100. I wouldn't be surprised. And I promise you, probably 85% of the time, maybe 90, when we walk off the elevator onto this view, at least one person in the group literally speaks the word wow. And I'm not even counting the times that they say, holy cow. I'm just saying about 85% of the time somebody literally speaks specifically the word wow. All right? It's a striking aesthetic. And this doesn't happen in concrete buildings. That doesn't happen at shell and core office projects. So it's really exciting that not only is this environmentally sustainable product good for the environment, but it's beautiful and it's successful for so many other reasons, and aesthetics is a really big part of it. And the other one that I think is most interesting and exciting is what it does to us people, the health and wellness benefits. So when you're surrounded by natural materials, there's principles called biophilic design. There's really interesting research. Not enough of it, but there's a lot, and it's growing, and I've read this more and more times in different ways. When you're surrounded by natural materials, we subconsciously look at this picture and we recognize that we're surrounded by natural materials and we have views outside the trees, right? And mind you, the alternative would be a ceiling like this and some white drywall, okay? Which is just, it's a beautiful, nice space, but it's not natural. And studies have shown that when you're in this biophilic environment, it improves your blood pressure. 23% lower stress levels. If you take 100 people and ask them to self-report their stress levels, 1 out of 4 will go from moderate to low self-reported stress, doing the exact same work the exact same way, just in this building instead of a standard white one. If I could offer you a pill that you could take every morning to reduce your stress level by 23%, think about that. Think about what that would do globally. But also they look at productivity. They give you a task and they distract you and they time how quickly you'll get back to the task at hand. They also look at absenteeism and sick days, and all those things are improved in a biophilic environment in a mass timber office building. I read a study about schools. They had a biophilic classroom and a control. The students in the biophilic classroom, yes, they reported reduced stress levels, but also the test score improvement over the course of 1 year of school for the biophilic classroom was 3.3 times greater than the test score improvement in the control classroom. Can you imagine what that would do to our schools? Where was I? I got to hurry up and get to Q&A. Now, some things that we've done really differently, we looked at other mass timber projects. They've tended to be a little more boutique, maybe a little more up and coming. And we at Crow Holdings, we just saw this product and we said, you know what, I think this is just a better product. And I don't understand why people are kind of poking at it. And we said, we want to take this to an institutional level. And we understand that it's new and that we're asking people to try something new. And so we said, let's tackle it in a way where there are no sacrifices, where nobody has to say, well, yeah, but. They can just constantly say, yes, 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 this building is on par or better than all the best buildings in the submarket, and it's mass timber. So they get more economical build out for the tenant, and it's mass timber. You know, we're going to give them the same TI. We're going to give them everything. They get the same fitness center or better. They get the same meeting space, or I think everybody would agree in this case, better. They get a grand 2-story lobby, and it's mass timber. You know, and we also looked to, we did the largest. And in that, we found a reduction of the premium. Side note, everybody always wants to know, what's the premium for mass timber? It is widely considered a premium. Most people will usually tell you it's about a 10% premium. Honestly, it's a dynamic question. It's really hard to peg it. Everybody always wants a simple answer. It depends on what other decisions you make around it. You know, when you design and develop a building, what are you going to do for the windows? What are you going to do for the finishes? How dense are you going to make it? How many parking spaces are you going to build? The truth of the matter is that mass timber versus concrete is one of a dozen big, meaningful decisions that has cost repercussions. And yes, it is more expensive than concrete. But, you know, I would encourage you to think of the premium as maybe 10%, or I think actually a little bit less. And if you can get companies and their brokers to speak honestly, they'll tell you that what they pay in rent is 1/10 of what they pay in payroll. So if you pay a little bit more in rent, then you'll get that back many times over in terms of productivity. And I also would point out that we made other decisions on this project. Our location has a little bit of more favorable property taxes, and that alone more than offset the premium for the cost. But in any case, we brought it to market, and we had to educate a whole bunch of people on what it was and how and why. And there's a happy ending when Toyota leases the entire thing, and it's really successful. And yes, we're in the process. We bought land for a second office building, and back before we knew how this was going to go, we did a concept design in concrete, and we're currently in process of changing that to mass timber because we're going to be proceeding with mass timber. This is a great slide. This is just an image. Some partners in the project, Sumitomo Forestry, they made a commercial about the building and about their initiatives to invest in wood products and wood construction. They have a great movement. They're a forestry company, right? And so they sort of see the world as building their forests out in the world and growing trees, which I think is a great image. And then this kind of gets into, again, I'm trying to drive home the point, if nothing else, that yes, environmentally, this is probably the best office building. But also just quality-wise, I think you have a lot of really good arguments to make that this would be the best office building. All right, before questions, a couple other points before I forget. Our mass timber, you always have to choose the species. We chose southern yellow pine, which is native to North Texas. And we were very fortunate that it worked out that we got to work with one of the most local providers. which was a wonderful benefit. And we got to use this product that's authentic and true, so that it's a fun story. The tenant's broker, he brought his mother to see the building, and she immediately said, that's yellow pine. She said, that's the factory that your father worked in building cabinets for most of his life, because it's true and authentic to the area. So I don't know, I'm sure I forgot a few other points. Carbon footprint. So embodied carbon, if this was a concrete building, would have been about 7,700 tons. By building with mass timber, it's a lighter product, it's smaller workforces, it's less extraction. So we reduced our embodied carbon by about 2,600 tons. Another benefit is you sequester or capture carbon inside the wood. And we sequestered a little over 4,000 tons. So about half of the mass of the wood is carbon captured inside. And mind you, had this tree been left in the forest, let alone, it eventually would have fallen and decomposed, and that carbon would have been let back out into the air. But it was cut down, captured, and used in construction, and should be in this building for 100 years or more. And one of the other interesting things about mass timber is it lends itself better to being deconstructed and repurposed elsewhere. So hopefully it can find yet another 100-year life, and again and again. Questions?
Absolutely. Do we have any questions for Jim? Hang on, Brandon, will you bring a microphone?
Can you speak to any scheduling benefits? Is it faster to build?
Yeah, it's faster. It's pretty amazing, actually, to watch them erect this building. That's a big part of why it has a reduced embodied carbon footprint. It goes up in panelized sections, and with a pretty small crew. I want to say the crew that erected this building was 8 people, maybe 10. And there's a meaningful schedule improvement by, let's say, a couple of months, something along those lines, which again helps reduce the embodied carbon on the investment side of things. It helps you get quicker to out of the construction phase and into the profitable operating phase. And so it's got meaningful returns on the investment side too that should not be underestimated.
Thanks, Jonathan. Just a question about where and how the wood is strengthened. Is that something that a typical lumber yard can handle? And related to that is, do you think tariffs are going to affect the availability of this in other parts of the country?
So fundamentally, its strength comes from the engineering, right? And it just comes from the fact that wood by itself is stronger in one direction and weaker in the other. And so that helps to explain a little bit why this assembling of boards and panels approach makes it stronger than it would be if it was just its own piece of wood. There's not like secret steel inside it or anything like that. There are. So this is basically boards of lumber, not unlike what you see at Home Depot. But this is the head of the class. So I think somebody told me once that if you thought of this as kind of the 90th percentile of lumber, in rough terms, that would be accurate. And that means there's strength characteristics and less moisture content. And so it's pretty amazing. If you go to a lumber yard, these things are more technologically savvy than you would think. They start to cut up the boards, and then they push them through, and they use knocking and sonar technology, and they can tell the strength of the board, and they look for imperfections with knots, and they look for the moisture content, and then they filter everything, because the stuff with better, lesser levels of moisture content, stronger, et cetera, they can sell for a higher price per cubic foot than they can the lesser class. So this is sort of the 90th percentile material. Oh, quick side note, tariffs. Yes, I think it'll make an impact. I'm hoping maybe it's more temporary. I've really enjoyed getting to work with our Canadian neighbors on this project. There's a tendency the Pacific Northwest and Canada is a pretty heavy player in this industry. I've gotten to know some great people and have had some successful business partners there. It's gonna, for the suppliers that we work with that would be coming from places impacted by the tariffs, they're projecting an impact. Might it make the difference on some projects? Probably. I don't know that it's a huge major difference. I think it's something that's maybe 10% on a portion of the package. Fortunately, there are a number of domestic suppliers, and more domestic suppliers are coming around, and I don't know, hopefully, I guess maybe I'm an optimist that some of these tariffs are more temporary than permanent, or they'll reach balance soon. One other quick side note, the amount of wood used for this building, if you look at the forests across the United States and Canada, this amount of wood was grown in those forests in a period of 11 minutes. So, half the time that I've been talking to you, roughly.
Thank you for the presentation. This is very informative. Could I have the address of the building?
Yeah, absolutely. 4401 Cirrus Way. That's Cirrus, Cirrus Way, and that's in Frisco, Texas 75034. It's about 20 minutes north of here as long as you're not in rush hour.
Awesome, thank you. And then my other question is, I know bamboo is applauded as like a very sustainable building material. Do they use bamboo in mass timber?
I don't know if they use bamboo specifically in mass timber. I mean, I know that I can tell you that when I go to the mass timber conference, there are suppliers who are using bamboo products. I suspect that is mass timber specifically by definition, but I couldn't tell you exactly. Usually when I'm looking at the kind of columns and beams for a building like this, you're talking about southern yellow pine, Douglas fir, European fir. We use a little bit of Alaskan yellow cedar. Bamboo, yeah.
And hardwoods, they're trying to do it in hardwoods now too.
Hardwoods and bamboo.
Yes, I wanted to ask about the insurance, right? Because then now I'm using more wood versus concrete. Can you talk more about that?
Yeah, insurance was a challenge. It's more expensive. It's insurance for a mass timber building as compared to a concrete building is notably more expensive. I mean, in terms of the big picture of the project, it's not going to make or break your deal. It'll sting a little bit. And a lot of people think that comes mostly from lack of familiarity, lack of proven case studies. I know there's been significant improvements there. There's an organization by the name of Woodworks who advocates on behalf of mass timber, and they've got a great initiative where they launched research, and you can find a really nice paper on their website, and they've really tried to understand it, identify it, explain it, and they're advocating to try to pull those insurance rates down. Pretty interesting, by the way, this building satisfies all the exact same code requirements that it would if it were typical concrete construction. Same seismic conditions, same fire ratings, same structural conditions. We don't get any exemptions. We satisfy all the same requirements, just do it differently.
And one last question.
Can you talk to us about the insulation properties and what are the R values of this type of building?
When you're working on R values and insulation for the building, it's not so much floor to floor, more inside to out with your windows. So I don't know that I could tell you that there's, I believe there's some benefit in terms of heating and cooling the building. I could tell you more so, there's a great acoustic benefit. Wood has terrific acoustic properties. The smell of it, everybody comments on the smell. You wouldn't think it, but they love it. And 85% of the people after they say, wow, and then they walk up to a column and they say, it smells so good, it's fantastic. I mean, it really does things to people. It's fascinating.
Jim, thank you so much. One thing, too, we've talked with some other folks at Crow Holdings, USGBC's North Texas region is working on scheduling a tour to come up there to actually take a look at the building and the whole project sometime later this year, maybe into the fall. So look for more information about that on our website. Thank you so much, and thank you for joining us, and thank you for supporting EarthX as Crow Holdings as well.
Of course. And if you come on the tour, you don't have to say wow just to make me feel good. It's okay.